Good morning, excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are participating in joining me on this journey in longevity. I will apologize. I practice what I preach. I'm on a treadmill desk. You'll be seeing more slides than me, but if I'm bobbing up and down, it's because I am always walking while I'm seeing patients in my clinic, at home while I'm doing research. So the topic today for a interventional and now preventive cardiologist, university professor, is a bit of a turn in my career, but more than a decade ago, I started really focusing on longevity, the basic science, the animal research, the human research, separating wheat from chaff. How can we live our best life and use the science? And it's a very challenging task to keep up with that because there is so much science and there's a lot of hope. There's too much hype and trying to find what will work. So we're going to talk, I didn't count them up, at least 30, I'm sure, data points about things that you can consider in your life. None of this is specific advice to you, but I don't think there's anything I'm talking about today that I haven't done or don't do regularly. So I'm speaking from a commitment I've made, and not necessarily to guarantee I'm making it to 120 or 150, although I actually think that's possible. I'm about to turn 63 and never had an operation and don't plan on having one and don't plan on taking prescription drugs unless I absolutely need to. So here we go, cardiac longevity, planning for 100 years. I actually think that's a conservative statement, but let's at least plan on 100 healthy years. I am the founder of a unique clinic outside of Detroit, the Kahn Center for Cardiac Longevity. And most of my teaching to medical students is at the largest medical school in the United States, Wayne State University School of Medicine. So we're going to go back for a minute to very early in writings and understanding, when God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be yours for food. Genesis 1, verse 29. And why do I bring that up? Because we won't go into a discussion about what your religious beliefs are, what mine are, whether you think the Bible is accurate as written or a good story that's persisted for thousands of years. But there is a group of people that had exceptional longevity, and they all lived on the diet that Genesis 1, verse 29 describes. So happy 969th birthday, Mr. Methuselah. Happy birthday to you. That is a lot of candles. In fact, it says right there, the candles on the cake could be seen from 7 miles away if you lit 969 candles. A little bit of trivia there, but some of you know that that is the oldest person reported in the Bible in terms of survival. And I had to actually look up a word because I saw this online, antediluvians. These are people reported in the Bible before the flood of Noah. And the Bible reports there are a lot of people living exceptionally long lives. Methuselah took the title, but Noah at 950 and some of his children and the rest. So whether, again, you believe this is stories or God's word, but we have a little bit of data that perhaps there is the potential for exceptionally long lives. What do we see nowadays, right now around the world? Well, if you look at South Korea and you look over to the right, men average 84 years of lifespan, women 90 years of lifespan, often felt to be the highest in the world. And you got to go down quite a few countries. In fact, I think it's about 33 countries because they didn't put every single one here from the statistics. But the United States is not number one. We have an average male lifespan of about 80 years and female of about 83. So despite extraordinary opportunities we have in the United States and access to some of the most advanced medical procedures, we're not doing it all in terms of this single measure of health, which is lifespan. But is lifespan the only measure? As I said, living to 100 is a goal. Living to a healthy 100 is a super strong goal. The oldest recorded authenticated lifespan in the modern era was Jean Calment, who passed away a few years back. Pretty good birth records, death records, 122 years old. You can tell from the picture she didn't exactly follow the real truth about health. Top points for health promotion, as she did smoke and had a cup of coffee in her hand nonstop. Not that coffee is a bad thing, but nonstop might make you pause for a minute. She also had an incredible sense of humor. This is her most famous quote: "I have only one wrinkle and I'm sitting on it." And at age 121, that's a pretty good sense of humor. I think you'd agree. But so we have that capacity. If one human did it, why can't more get well beyond 100 in a healthy way? And how long can we live and want to live? Well, the rate of increase on average is certainly escalating. The average lifespan in 1600 was only about 30 to 35 years. And in 1950 was only in the range of about 60 years. And here we are now, as we just saw, around 80 to 83 years in the United States. There has been a little drop off the last couple of years, which is concerning. Without doubt, SARS-CoV-2 contributed a bit to it in the United States, but it appears just in general, lifestyle, stress, environmental toxins, and actually medical mishaps. Some people rank medical mishaps, medical errors in the hospital, allergies, transfusion reactions, inappropriate surgeries being the number 3 cause of death in the United States. That was Johns Hopkins University that reported that, although the number has gone down with implementing protocols to avoid hospital catastrophes. Another concept you should know about, and this is key, is called compression of morbidity, limiting the time a person spends ill or infirm by postponing illness, or once morbidity occurs, hastening death. Well, we don't want to hasten death, but what if you could live a very long time in good health and quickly go downhill and life ends with very little pain and suffering? Largely due to preventive measures and healthy lifestyles, relates to physical and psychological health benefits. And when you map that out, if you look at the upper curve, there's a term lifespan and health span. And this shows on the upper curve where people are living a long life, and most of it is in good health. That's called the health span. So there's an example there of somebody living 40,000 days. Only the last 1,000 days, that's too many, that's about 3 years, are in poor health, but 39,000 of the 40,000 are in good health. Now, the average reality isn't that good. The average reality is living about 30,000 days, age 80 or so. 5,000 of the 30,000 are in poor health. So that is more than 10 years on average. And what if we could shift this curve? Even if we didn't live longer, if we could live healthier, that would be a better health span. But if we can do both, a better health span and a better lifespan. So as it says here, the goal is to die young as late as possible. And we're going to study how do you do that starting today. What if you can just live 10 more healthy years? This is a goal often mentioned in the health and longevity world. Aubrey de Grey is a very distinctive looking expert on longevity, tall, thin, with a very long white beard. And he says it's quite likely that the first person to live to 1,000 years is already in their 40s or 50s. The idea here is if you can stay super healthy from 2022 to 2032, there's going to be so many advances in medicine, in health, in longevity science, in gene therapy, and organ replacement, in brain enhancement, that you'll probably gain more than those 10 years from the advancements. The pace of science is picking up. So don't be casual about this and say, I'm going to start my health journey in a year or two. Start it today. You're going to learn lots and lots of tips here you'll enjoy. This is a little technical, but this is another concept since I want you to be an educated audience. Longevity escape velocity. Progress avoids diminishing returns. Right now, some experts in longevity, like Dr. Peter Diamandis, estimate Every 4 years, there's enough information on longevity, health span, lifespan research that's practical that we may gain the information to extend our life by 1 year. Every 4 years, we gain the information to extend life by 1 year. What if we get to the point where every year there's enough science, advancement, contributions? Every year, we gain information to gain a year. When that happens, the point on the bottom of the slide, B, maintain health span indefinitely, may be possible. So if you stay healthy for a year and then you start to get some arthritis in the hip, there may be a new regenerative therapy for your hip that doesn't require surgery, as an example. If you stay healthy for a year and you begin to have some memory issues, but there are therapies like hyperbaric oxygen therapy I'll talk about that restore your memory and your brain volume, then you might be able to enjoy a good health span. So that's a concept to be aware of, although you won't hear that too often unless you're really deep into longevity research. I want to talk about two things and then move to practical things. These are high science. Some of you may know about a technique called CRISPR, and I won't go through the long definition of what CRISPR is. That's down to an acronym. But I do a lot of genetic testing in my cardiology practice. I am intrigued when somebody said, my father had a heart attack at 48, my mother had a stroke at 41, and we deep dive into why. What did you inherit from mom and dad? Well, what if you did inherit some bad genes? We'll talk about ApoE and 9p21, or the gene for lipoprotein a on chromosome 6. Well, there is the potential around the corner that we'll be able to silence genes so they stop making products that could be harmful. What if we could silence the gene that calls for lipoprotein a and you just stop making it? And that is the future of gene editing. And the other would be, what if you're lacking a gene and you don't have the proper gene to make a protein that's important to health? There may be the ability to insert that gene into your DNA and come up with repaired, restored, and normal DNA. And these things are actually being used right now in clinical medicine. It's been estimated that really within a short time, 8 years from now, this CRISPR gene editing, gene insertion technology may have the potential to cure at least 13 diseases. Some of them you've heard of: sickle cell disease, thalassemia, Alzheimer's, that's a big one, Huntington's disease, not common, but awful, autism spectrum, again, probably more than one disease, and some eye diseases and leukemias. What if we could actually alter the genes to restore them to normal? Because lifestyle is powerful, but lifestyle does not take care of every single issue. Another high science point I just want to introduce you to, then we'll move on to practical approaches, is the fact that a Japanese scientist and medical doctor physician, Shinya Yamanaka, won the Nobel Prize in Medicine over understanding how to turn on and turn off stem cells in cell cultures and also in ultimately big mammals like humans. And he found 4 proteins. They're there in the circles: OX3-4, SOX2, KLF4, and CMYC. And these are called Yamanaka factors. And Yamanaka factors, named after Dr. Yamanaka, can take fully mature cells. A fibroblast might make collagen and can insert Yamanaka factors into that cell and have them return to a more youthful state, to a stem cell. So perhaps your knee is full of damaged cartilage and inflammation and bone on bone, and perhaps we'll be able to inject factors. This is being done, not necessarily Yamanaka factors, but through another pathway called the Wnt pathway right now. And a company hopes to actually get FDA approval perhaps by next year doing this. But what if we can induce stem cells that then can grow to be bone or cartilage or heart cells or brain cells after a stroke? So this is not all that far off. There are already clinical trials of using Yamanaka factors to create stem cells that can differentiate to be what the body needs. Very hopeful. A lot of research to do. Let's talk about genetics. This is a busy chart. You see at the top, determinants of health, genetics 21%. This chart was dreamed up by some very smart researchers I met. You can see that our physical environment, which is the green slice, whether we have trees and water and fresh air or pollution and factories and no sidewalks, is about 7% of our overall health. If you look to your right, the choices you make, your lifestyle, individual behavior is the big orange tan section of the pie, 38%. If you look below social circumstances, your network, your friends, your family, those that support you is a big chunk. Genetics are the yellow, green, lime green to the left, 21%. And then medical care is a rather paltry 11%. That's what's done in clinics and hospitals. So genetics are big, and that estimate was 21%. I want to point out genes and longevity of lifespan. If you look at the bottom, this was just published in 2022, a review article. I'm going to read it. Aging is a complex process indicated by low energy levels, declined physiologic activity, that's right, stress-induced loss of homeostasis, leading to the risk of diseases and mortality. Several environmental and physiologic factors contribute to the aging process. However, about 40% of human life expectancy is inherited amongst generations. Many lifespan-associated genes, genetic mechanisms, and pathways have been demonstrated during the last decades, end of quote. 40% of longevity may be determined. How old were your parents? How old were their parents, your aunts, your uncles? And when studies are done, for example, in the blue zones, we'll talk about, it's not all lifestyle. It is common that elderly people have parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles that were quite elderly too. If you could pick parents, you would pick those in good health. My mother, God bless her, will turn 90 this year and is of amazing mental and pretty darn good physical capacity, and wishing her 100. It's good for her. It actually turns out pretty good for me. So let's talk about practical steps about being the CEO of your own life, the CEO of your own health. Start making executive decisions about your health today. And I am a cardiologist at heart, and it has, if you read the slide properly, don't die of heart disease, know your arterial age. Every 40 seconds, someone in the United States has a heart attack. So maybe you're excited about CRISPR technology, or you're excited to learn more about the genetics of longevity, or you're excited about Yamanaka factors and other things I put there to tease you about the current exciting aspects of anti-aging medicine. But what about the fact that you may not make it long enough to enjoy the hopeful realization of all this excitement and investment and reality, because you have clogged arteries you don't know about. You have to know how old your arteries are. Who first said that? Well, a physician almost 400 years ago said that. Dr. Thomas Sydenham, the most famous physician in England, who was well-schooled in autopsies, said, a man is as old as his arteries. And although there's a lot of different ways to measure how old you are beyond your driver's license birth date, from telomeres to epigenetic age, something called the Horvath clock, and other things we won't go deep into. The most practical way right now is to see a cardiologist with a clinic like mine and get a handle and knowledge on how old your arteries are. You can have a simple ultrasound. You see a picture there in the bottom of a woman with a probe lightly placed on her neck. No radiation, takes about 15 minutes. Pictures to the right show the carotid artery splitting into its two branches, external and internal. And this simple test can measure the thickness of the wall of the carotid artery. You can compare that to other people of your age and gender and come up with the fact I'm average in terms of this marker. Thicker arteries are sicker, thicker. Thinner is more normal, healthier. And you can get a report. I'm 54 years old and my arteries are like a 73-year-old. That's concerning. I'm 54 years old and my arteries are like a 39-year-old. Congratulations. This is not an easy test to find. It's an easy test to perform. We do them in my clinic and it is easy to perform. You then have to find a reliable place to interpret them because it takes a computer. This is digital. This is called precision medicine. This is how all medicine should be practiced. No eyeball around. And if there is some plaque or bumps or atherosclerosis, you'll get a detailed report there too. So this is just an example from my clinic. If you look at December 2016, was a 59-year-old woman in this case with arteries like a 65-year-old woman, concerning, above average. But just to tease you a bit here, she went from being 59 to age 61 because it was a couple of years later, but her thickness went down to a much more normal, in fact, to a superior level. 0.806 went down to 0.677, and her arterial age dropped below her biologic age. She's now, according to her arteries, 52 years old, not 65. That is real reversal of arterial aging. That's what happens when you change your diet, when you put fitness in your life, and when you sprinkle in some of the things I'm going to talk about. The other test that will give you your arterial age, and I consider crucial, is a coronary artery calcium CT scan. This is a radiologic study. So yes, there is a very small amount of radiation, similar to what a woman might get during a mammogram. The test takes maybe 20 seconds. You lie down on a bed inside a circular CT scanner, no needle, no IV, no injection. Pictures are made very quickly at very low radiation. And you go home without a Band-Aid, without any blood. The three examples here, A, B, and C, show the breakthrough that we learned decades ago, that this simple low radiation CT scan can show the heart arteries without any injection of dye. So in panel A, the yellow arrow is pointing to heart arteries that are free of calcium. Calcium is a definite sign of aging, of atherosclerosis. Panel B shows a few white spots. White is usually bone-like material. And this person has accumulated atherosclerosis they did not know about. That's aging. That's not a person aging properly. Although if they're very elderly, that still might be below average for their biologic age. And C shows the real scary factor. When you start ordering, and I've ordered probably 15,000 of these heart calcium CT scans over the years because they've been available in Michigan since 1995 or 1996. And I've been involved in this scientific effort. Some people are walking around with massive amounts of calcified heart artery, panel C. They are aging. They don't need to worry about Yamanaka and CRISPR technology. They need to worry about heart prognosis and risk of heart attack, stents, bypass, and death. Just out of interest, if you look at panel C in the upper right corner, that's a rib. And you can see a rib is very white from all the calcium in a bone. And then you look at the heart arteries and you can see they're even more calcified than a rib. That's very, very concerning. It's not likely this person will need a stent or bypass, but it is possible, and they need the full evaluation. Does it matter if you find out what your arterial age is on calcium scoring CT scans? In my town, they cost $75. Cleveland, they're free. In Texas, they're covered by insurance. In your town, they might be $125. Just without going into too deep detail, if you get your report back and it comes back 0 to 10, your chance of dying of heart disease over the next 5 years is very close to 0. And if you do this test and it comes back very high, like over 1,000, if you don't have diabetes, you have a considerable risk of death over 5 years. If you have diabetes and this high calcium score, you're older than you think you are, and we need to love on you a lot in a clinic like mine and university centers, because your risk of dying is considerable, 20% in 3.5 years. And we need to determine what you need, from medication to surgery to lifestyle to prevention to reversal. So it isn't just arterial age measured by carotid ultrasound, CIMT, and heart calcium CT scoring. You need a few labs better than average. What this shows from a study in the United States called MESA, Multi-Ethnic Study of Atherosclerosis, is that occasionally the labs your doctor's doing on the routine blood work, the LDL cholesterol, aren't telling the whole story. And the red line is the key. Some people have a low LDL cholesterol, LDL-C, but they can get a simple blood test called LDL particle number, LDL-P, and it actually reveals that it's way out of range. This is particularly common if you carry extra weight in the body, are pre-diabetes, are diabetic, or have what's called metabolic syndrome. And you may look at that and say, well, my LDL is 97. It's under 100. The lab says that's okay. But when you do the LDL particle number, it's 2,000 instead of 1,000. So that's one example of advanced labs at a very low cost that you can ask your doctor for. The introduction was very kind and talked about my most recent book, Lipoprotein A, the Heart's Quiet Killer. An important read that I would urge you to get both for the recipes and the science. Lipoprotein A is inherited in 20 to 25% of us, comes on chromosome 6. Maybe in the future, we'll use CRISPR technology to delete that gene and stop making it. Right now, we can't. It does 3 very bad things in some people, not everybody. It causes inflammation. That was a theory that during the pandemic, people who inherited lipoprotein A may have more inflammation from the SARS-CoV-2 virus. There's limited research, it's a theory. It causes clotting, prothrombotic clotting. Clotting is the final step in a lot of heart attacks, strokes, and death. It also was a big deal during the pandemic, as you're aware. And if you look to the left, it's proatherogenic. It leads to lesions. It leads to bumps. It leads to plaque. It leads to calcified plaque. People who've had stents and angioplasty balloons who have lipoprotein A inheritance have much more re-narrowing and repeat events than those that don't. People who've had bypass surgery and inherited lipoprotein A have much more problem with their bypasses over the 5 to 10 years after bypass. How many doctors check this $30 blood test? Less than 1% of doctors in the United States check it because it's not on the routine cholesterol panel. You have to check the box, but it's available every hospital, every Quest, every LabCorp, every Life Extension lab. It's available. Strongly urge you talk to your doctor about checking it on your next test. If it's elevated, you can get to an expert who deals with lipoprotein A. Even fewer people have heard of 9p21. 9p21 is a gene. It's on chromosome 9. I assume that's why it's called 9p21. We're not completely sure how it activates atherosclerosis, but if you look over to the right, it does. It was found in certain genetic searches. And in some recent data, we're gaining recognition. This is a blood test, a modestly inexpensive blood test. You can have a lab like Quest Lab, LabCorp, certain genetic panels, 23andMe, and you can find out if you inherited. It's actually very common to inherit 9p21 from one parent, maybe as many as 50% of us, but it's really those that inherit 2 from both parents, but that may be as common as 25% of us. And this is a research paper just published this year, Integrated Prioritization of Causal Genes for Coronary Artery Disease. They took a population of patients with heart blockage. They had a panel of blood work that had 62 genes that all had good reason to suspect these genes played a role in causing coronary artery disease. They were ranked by the power that they found in this study. And the top on the list was the location called CDKN2B, but that is the 9p21 gene. The most predictive gene in this panel of 162 candidates was 9p21, precision medicine. I do 9p21 in my clinic. It is amazing how frequent it is abnormal and how frequent it is the double version abnormal. This is an interesting picture of some genes for a variety of cardiometabolic health issues, from obesity to dyslipidemia, which are cholesterol disorders, to hypertension, high blood pressure, to smoking, because even smoking can be controlled. Addictive behavior can be inherited, to other risk factors, and finally to diabetes. If you look where the red heart in the middle is and you look to the right, the first thing that's there is ApoE. ApoE is another gene that you can order on a blood panel at all the big lab providers. You can get it from mom and dad. You always do. And there's three versions: ApoE2, ApoE3, ApoE4. Turns out ApoE4 is not an ideal thing to inherit from mom and dad. And sometimes you get it from just one parent. That's called heterozygous. And sometimes you get it from both parents. That's called homozygous. If you look at this green boxes way to the right, if you're one of the about 5% of people in the United States that inherits ApoE4, your brain has a hard time handling cholesterol metabolism, particularly if you get it from both parents, called E4, and it raises your risk not just of heart attack and clogged arteries, but it also raises your risk of Alzheimer's. And if you look at here, the lifetime risk of Alzheimer's can be over 50% if you have the genetic inheritance E4, versus, for example, the most common one is E3, way to the left, where the lifetime risk of Alzheimer's is more about 8%. So which would you rather have, 8% or over 50%? This is another target that might be available in the future using CRISPR technology to delete the gene and bring the risk back to normal. How about heavy metals? And although I like Metallica music, I'm talking about toxins that we don't make, but we can get in our body through the environment: arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. There's different ways to measure heavy metals in the body, but the easiest way is blood. Hair is another way. Urine is a third way. And even a simple screen. I wonder how in the last week my lifestyle exposed me to these 3 or 4 heavy metals, particularly mercury, can be very revealing. In my clinic, we do this with blood, and about 10% of people are sky high on mercury. And we have to talk to them about their tuna intake, their other fish intake, the health of their dental status, and we have to deal with that. So it's something that you can ask for and make sure. I rarely see in my vegan population elevated levels, although sometimes arsenic is hidden in rice, and sometimes your water pipes in your house could be shedding lead into your body. So it's always possible. A new blood panel has come on the market. I'm not an investor, so I can talk about it without conflict. It's called Gallery. It's launched. It's in my clinic. We use it. It's one blood draw, 2 tubes of blood that screens for 50 kinds of cancer, not the genetic risk, but a pattern in the DNA that suggests you actually have this cancer. It's about 44% accurate. So if it comes back abnormal, we're not absolutely going to find a kidney cancer, a bladder cancer, an ovarian cancer. Most of these cancers, there's no other way to look for them. So a lot of these are unique. You still get your mammogram or thermogram. You still do your colonoscopy, or you do your Cologuard. You still get your prostate screening. But it is a new technology. I'm glad to say I did mine and I'm negative. My wife too, for all 50. We still do our screening. We still have our lifestyle. It's an expensive blood test. It's around $1,000. A couple last comments, and I'm going to shift. But one area of future research is to do an MRI scan without contrast of your whole body. They do this in various clinics. I've had this done on me. In clinics that do this routinely, it's expensive, sorry. It's about 3% of people find something they didn't know about, a small tumor, a small aneurysm, a small growth, and they can be on top of this early. By not injecting contrast, there's very little downside. And finally, you can quantify the volume of your brain. This is brand new technology out of Finland using artificial intelligence. I actually had this done yesterday. It uses non-contrast MRI. I'll be sending my data over to Finland to be analyzed and predict the brain age compared to my biologic age. So it's not just artery age now. These are new and cutting edge. The company from Finland, which I'm not an investor in, is called Combinostics. And finally, a study you can do at home for sleep problems. It used to be a big deal to get a sleep study in a clinic, in an office building, in a hospital. Now, this is an Israeli device I use in my clinic called WatchPat 1. You can reach out to me. We can tell you how you get one. But one night's sleep at home in your comfortable bed, you find out if you have sleep apnea or not. And a lot of people do, and they age because of it. All right, I'm going to apologize, Steve, for about 30 seconds. I have to answer a hospital call. I'm going to leave this on. I'll be right back. Everybody can study the slide, and I'll come back. All right. Welcome back. I apologize. That happens about once a month, but I have a real practice. I'm a real doctor, and I have a real obligation to my patients, of which I have one in the emergency room, which is a rare event. So lifestyle, let's talk about lifestyle. Let's assume as we shift that we know our arterial age. We've done our carotid ultrasound. We've done our calcium score. We've done our gene testing to give us some insight if we want to. We've done our advanced blood work. Maybe we did a WatchPat 1 home sleep study, which at my clinic is a routine test. Maybe we've explored total body or brain MRI and brain age. But what can we do right this minute? Lifestyle. So those Harvard School of Public Health looked at over 118,000 men and women, followed for about 34 years for the women and 28 years for the men, to look at what predicts extra life, usually a pretty good health span part of life too. And what they found is, let's take age 50 as an example. If you could say at age 50, I eat a healthier diet than the average American, the definition was just a diet in the top 40% of the health scale. So there's going to be a lot of fruits and vegetables, grains and legumes, but it didn't have to be completely plant-based. It can be. You exercise 30 minutes or more a day. I got mine in this morning. You maintain a healthy body weight using what's usually called a healthy body mass index of 18 to 25. You're allowed to drink, according to the Harvard study, but not too much. No more than 1 glass of wine a day for a woman, 2 for a man. You might say that's a lot, and you don't need to, and I never recommend drinking. But that's the Harvard data, and you don't smoke. Well, if you can say at age 50, I do 5 of 5 health habits, you have an extra 12 to 14 years of life predicted compared to people that ignore the 5 steps that Harvard identified. Now, there were many other factors, but these were the 5 most powerful steps that they measured. What about more recent data in 2022? What are the top foods for life expectancy? Well, GBD is Global Burden of Disease. It's the name of a massive research program funded by the Gates Foundation all over the world, 190 countries, 3,000 researchers, a lot of data, big data on a lot of people, including what they eat and how long they live. In the paper that was published, Estimating Impact of Food Choices on Life Expectancy, a modeling study. So they took the data from 2019. They looked at foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, refined grains, nuts, legumes, fish, egg, milk, dairy, red meat, processed meat, and sugar-sweetened beverages. A sustained dietary change may give a substantial health gain for people of all ages, both for optimized and feasible. Optimized is if you do it really well. Feasible is if you make some small changes. The gains are predicted to be larger the earlier the dietary changes are initiated in life. I adopted a whole food, plant, vegan diet at age 18. That's 45 years ago. It's worked out very well. I'm glad I did it at 18, and I'm glad I didn't do it at 58 years old, but that would have been a good choice too. The longer, the better. So what did they find in the Global Burden of Disease modeling study? The largest gain would be made by eating more legumes. Oh my God, there's books written that legumes are dangerous. That's not what the GBD study found. You can add a couple years to your life by eating more beans, peas, and lentils. How about whole grains? That was number 2 in the statistical analysis. Add a couple years to your life by eating more whole grains. And finally, nuts. Nuts add longevity. Not the first time it's been published, but confirmed again by this massive tens of millions of patient points in the GBD study. What do you want to eat less of? The 2 most important ones to eat less of were red meat and processed red meat. You might lose 1.5 to 2 years by regularly eating red meat or processed red meat, and you'll gain them if you quit or cut back significantly. If you look over to the optimal diet on the left, this is still from the GBD Global Burden of Disease study. You can see the first 3 most impactful choices are legumes, whole grains, and nuts. They add years to your expected lifespan, while red meat, processed meat, followed by sugar-sweetened beverages, refined grains, and eggs reduce your longevity. So important data to consider. Let's talk about the blue zones as a lifestyle option for longevity, health span, lifespan. Where do people live the longest? The top 5 countries by average life expectancy. And if you go to the bottom of the sides, the blue zones contain the highest concentration of people who are active past the age of 100, like Jean Calment, although she did not live in a typical blue zone. And if you go over Okinawa, Japan, then you go to the Mediterranean, 2 places, Sardinia, Italy, in Icaria, Greece. People pronounce it both ways. And if you go over to the left, Loma Linda, California, the home of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and a peninsula on the Pacific of Costa Rica called the Nicoya Peninsula. So these 5 areas have become very famous. People have studied what's different here. Why are there so many 105-year-olds that are still walking up a hill pulling fresh vegetables? And that's 2 of the tips. They were walking up a hill and they were pulling fresh vegetables and they were outside. So when these were analyzed, the blue zones came up with 9 principles of long life we can copy. We'll go from the left to the right. Downshift, reduce stress. Find something to reduce stress. Number 2, have purpose in life. Wake up each day with something to do. Don't get bored. Don't be retired and not have some commitment to volunteering or family or grandkids or education. Plant slant, less meat, more plants. We know that. Then wine at 5. Enjoy a glass a day with friends if you want to, not if you have a problem, not if you don't want to. And it doesn't say enjoy a bottle. Family first, and spend time with your family can add 6 years to your life. 80% rule comes from Okinawa. It's called Harihachibu, but it's eating to your 80% full, then stopping, mindful eating, chewing slowly around a family table, friends. Move naturally, find ways to move more, like my exercise treadmill desk I'm on right now. You'll burn calories without thinking about it. The right tribe, surround yourself with people who support positive behaviors. If you're struggling with smoking, you've got to exit your friends who are smokers, or it's going to be very difficult. And finally, belong to a faith-based community, attend services, can add 4 to 14 years to your lifespan, according to the Blue Zones analysis. This is more from the Blue Zones, where they looked at 3 areas that had the most divergent diets. Loma Linda diet wasn't like Okinawa diet, wasn't like Sardinia, Italy diet. But if you look in the middle, what did they all have in common? A focus on family, a focus on not smoking, a focus on plant-based diets, a focus on constant moderate physical activity, a focus on being socially engaged with friends and family or work. And finally, legumes. There's our friends again. Legumes, beans, peas, lentils were found in all these 3 very different communities. If you just look around, you can see in Sardinia, they eat a lot of fava beans and they drink Canana wine high in polyphenols. If you look at Okinawa, they love turmeric. They're likable people and they're not in a rush. And Loma Linda is famous for its nuts and healthy social circle of a community of Seventh-day Adventists. What about legumes? We've mentioned them over and over. If you look at the bottom, this is research from 2004, looking to identify in Japan, Sweden, Greece, and Australia, the #1 predictive food group for longevity, 785 people over age 70, dietary record, 7 years of follow-up. The legume food group showed a 7 to 8% reduction in death mortality for every 20-gram increase in daily intake, with or without controlling for ethnicity. That was the number one most powerful food choice. Is, did I have a bean salad today? Did I have a lentil loaf, a lentil soup? Did I have some peas in my rice, or peas in my risotto, or peas in my vegetable soup, or throw them in a salad? Legumes win the day. And there was a book written in 2017 called The Plant Paradox by medical doctor Stephen Gundry, and it's nothing but misinformation. There's a term we use a lot now. All right, let's talk about fitness. You ready for fitness? Simple fitness tests and longevity, specifically what we're talking about. So without a doubt, treadmill testing, treadmill time, exercise fitness is a predictor of mortality or survival over and over. And this is just one study in the famous New England Journal of Medicine of over 6,200 men referred for a treadmill exercise test for a variety of reasons, followed over 6 years, see what happened. And the peak exercise capacity measured in something that shows up on a treadmill report called MET level or MET level. But your exercise fitness capacity was the strongest predictor of the risk of death among both normal subjects and those with heart disease. Higher fitness, lower death. Lower fitness, higher death rates. Let's just look in the upper left for a minute. Normal subjects, percentage surviving over time. And you can see if they had a fitness level greater than 8 METs, they had a much better survival than if they had a fitness level less than 5 METs. Just a way of describing fitness. I mean, how fast can you walk? How fast can you climb stairs? How well can you do in the neighborhood without getting short of breath when the hill comes, when you got to carry a grocery bag? How fit are you? And you probably have some sense, but more fitness is better. What about other unique ways of assessing your fitness and survival? How about push-ups? Well, it turns out the Harvard School of Public Health looked at 1,104 firefighters, active adult men. They did a variety of exams on them, and they followed them up over 10 years for heart risk. They identified that everybody was asked to do as many push-ups as they could within, I believe it was a minute. Those that could do 40 push-ups or more within a minute had an amazing 99% reduction in the chance of developing heart disease during those 10 years compared to those that could do less than 10 push-ups. Push-ups are no cost, fast, and a simple measure to assess your fitness capacity. So if you look at this, look at the box to the left. More than 41 is sort of a gray color. 0 to 10 push-ups is the black line. The chance of surviving the black line, those firefighters that could only do 10 or less push-ups, is considerably more disturbing than the rest of the group that could do better. And it really is like a dose. If you can get to 40 or more push-ups in a minute, you have done something very good to test your own fitness. You can even do it on a kitchen counter, on an incline, and push up against the counter. It costs nothing. How fast can you fly or climb, fly up or climb 4 flights of stairs? It may reveal your heart health. Different study. Researchers say how quickly a person can walk up 4 flights of stairs may be an indicator of their heart health. Participants who climbed the stairs in less than 45 seconds achieved a very good fitness level as if they had done a formal exercise stress test in a cardiologist's office or a hospital. They also say there are other tasks, such as carrying a bag of groceries to a car, that can be used as a gauge of heart health. But I'm in a medical building. We only have 2 flights of stairs, so I'm challenged to do this. But I go up them and down them regularly. And, you can go up and down, although this is straight up 4 flights of stairs, assuming you can do it, and see if you can do it in 45 seconds, or do it at any pace you can. Don't hurt yourself. Here's another interesting one, squats and survival, a 3-minute test of cardiorespiratory fitness, 30 squats in 45 seconds. They took adults between age 18 and 64, men and women. The best predictors were what happened to their heart rate, but the squat test is used as another way to assess what kind of shape are you in. I do 40 squats every morning. And finally, another quick fitness tip. Some of you may have heard of what's often considered a yoga flow, the 5 Tibetan rites of longevity. And there are many books. This is just one that you can read, or videos you can watch, or articles, including one I wrote about why I do this yoga flow every morning. It takes about 9 minutes. But there is this hidden belief that it also has ancient anti-aging longevity secrets, including keeping your hair dark. I don't verify any of that. I've just read these books. And you can study this at home, the 5 Tibetan rites. Step 1, you circle around clockwise 21 times if you can manage to do that. I used to get dizzy. My brain has gotten very used to this. I no longer get even the slightest dizziness. Number 2 is you're doing like a pike with your legs 21 times. Number 3 is a back bend 21 times. Number 4 is a front bend 21 times. And number 5 is sort of, again, a downward dog to an upward dog yoga position 21 times, although you might start doing it 3 times and work your way up. If you have the back and the core capacity, it's a wonderful ritual to do every day. There actually is a 6th Tibetan rite involving breathing practices that's been added on. All right, let's go to some more fun bonus longevity habits to learn about. Sauna bathing. This is a study I picked out of many, dozens, from 2018. Sauna bathing is associated with reduced cardiovascular mortality and improves risk prediction in men and women, a prospective study. The higher frequency and duration of sauna bathing are each strongly, inversely, and independently associated with fatal cardiovascular disease events in middle-aged, elderly, male and females. The frequency of sauna bathing improves the prediction of the long-term risk for cardiovascular disease mortality, heart attack, strokes, bypass, stents. So the more you use the sauna, the more frequent you use the sauna, the longer you use the sauna, the lower is your risk of death. This is a very large prospective study in Finland. Finland is doing most of this study. So if you look over to the left, that's the frequency during the week of using a sauna you have access to. In Finland, most people have a sauna in their backyard or associated with their home. The blue line is using the sauna once a week. The green line is more than 4 times a week. And the measure is your risk of cardiovascular mortality. And you can lower your risk of dying of heart disease, at least associated, by the habit of using your sauna 4 or more times a week. If you look to the right, that's how many minutes you spend in the sauna a week, a different way to measure it. The blue line is less than 15 minutes a week in the sauna. The green line is more than 45 minutes a week in the sauna. And in 16 years of follow-up, the risk of dying of a heart-related condition goes down dramatically with the amount of time you spend in your sauna. And this is, again, from an ongoing large prospective research project in Finland, where this is part of their culture. They do adjust for many factors like diabetes, smoking, high blood pressure, body weight, age, blood pressure, diet. So they tease out independently what sauna can do. Infrared sauna has a wealth of data from Japan. I have in my home a full spectrum infrared sauna, near, mid, and far, and I use it regularly. Steam and dry sauna all have data more from Finland. I mentioned already the term for a minute that not everybody's familiar with, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, HBOT, the administration of a higher pressure and a higher concentration of oxygen in room air. This happens to be a very large hyperbaric oxygen chamber outside of Tel Aviv, Israel. There's similar chambers like this now in the villages north of Orlando in Florida, and also now in Dubai. They opened because the Israelis have a company called Aviv Medical, AVIV, like Tel Aviv. Aviv means spring, maybe youthful. And what they've shown, and I won't go through all the data, but you can actually document, for example, MRI brain blood flow, that pre and post hyperbaric oxygen therapy, there's a dramatic increase in brain blood flow by various protocols. They developed outside of Tel Aviv, a researcher that I'm acquainted with, Shai Efrati, MD, a nephrologist, but his research now is all on aging and hyperbaric oxygen therapy and post-traumatic stress disorder and hyperbaric oxygen therapy and stroke and recovery and hyperbaric oxygen therapy. But a lot of it's on anti-aging. They've discovered that while people are sitting in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, they alternate between 100% oxygen and room air, 100% oxygen and room air. And that alternating administration of high oxygen, they believe, stimulates more anti-aging factors than the protocols that are used in people who've had a scuba diving accident or have wound therapy, where they don't usually do that. So if you look over, this is work from Dr. Shai Efrati. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a new treatment approach for Alzheimer's disease. You can look in the middle under neurons. PO2 is oxygen levels. And they believe by going up and down, hyperoxia, that means a lot of oxygen, hypoxia, low oxygen. It's the alternating that stimulates the growth of a variety of factors or release of a variety of factors that can stimulate return of function in brain cells and maybe new brain cells. Fascinating. And there probably is a center in your town that offers hyperbaric oxygen therapy. There are thin-walled chambers that can't achieve high pressure, and there are thick-walled metal chambers, like the one I showed you a picture of, that they can get to at least 2 atmospheres to make this comparable to what they're doing with the Israeli research group. All right, total shift. These are add-ons to your longevity plan. Eat less sometimes. Fasting is like spring cleaning for your body. And the research that was done over the last 20 to 30 years started in yeast, worms, flies, and small mammals. In any group where you restrict their calories, dietary restriction, there are now known pathways, particularly if you look way over to the left under the yeast, if you restrict the glucose in the diet and the amino acids, which seem to be predominantly from animal foods in the diet. The bottom line, if you look at the lower part of the screen, is there's protective and metabolic activities that increase lifespan in these animal models or other setups that lead to prolonged life and healthier life, and led to a lot of research. What can we reproduce in humans that involves calorie restriction, dietary restriction, fasting, and gain some benefit? So there's a variety of fasting options. The Daniel fast is from the book of Daniel 1 and book of Daniel chapter 10, 21 days of water and pulses. Pulses are legumes. There you have it again. Legumes show up as a healthy choice. If you go to the right, you can eat one day your normal amount and barely eat the next day. That's been studied. In England, it's popular to eat normal 5 days a week and pick 2 days a week to eat 500 to 600 calories. That has actually not been studied that much. It's just a very popular series of books. A lot of the world is doing what's in the lower right, time-restricted feeding. Maybe they're eating 8 hours a day and not eating 16. There actually isn't all that much overwhelming data for that either. It's been studied. And finally, in the lower left, fasting mimicking diet. Reduced calories for 5 days in a row, once a month, for patients who might be obese or have multiple disease risk factors, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, every 3 to 4 months for the others. 1,100 calories the first day, 750 calories the next 4 days before returning to normal eating. Food choices are high in unsaturated fats, perhaps from nuts, and very low in sugar and protein, the fasting mimicking diet, or FMD. And that has taken over the science world as the most science-backed approach to dietary restriction, calorie restriction. 5 days out of the 30-day month, 5 days in a row, and you can eat whatever you want healthy for the other days of the month. Fasting mimicking diet. The genius for this research goes to a University of Southern California professor, a friend of mine, Dr. Walter Longo, born in Genoa, Italy, but he's been in LA for about 30 years. He pioneered the research that factors like glucose and amino acids from protein trigger certain pathways. The pathways are known as IGF-1 pathway, mTOR pathway, PKA pathway. If these are overactive, they promote aging, and you can accelerate aging by too much sweeteners, too much protein. That's why in the fasting mimicking diet, he reduces those dramatically for 5 days, and you actually can measure improvements. So if you look at the bottom in green, the fasting mimicking diet supports healthy weight loss. It supports keeping your lean muscular body mass. A lot of diets, if you lose weight, you lose fat stores and protein muscle stores. You don't want to. It might have an impact on cholesterol, fasting blood sugar, rejuvenation, regeneration, and it's real food. So it's a fasting mimicking diet. You get to eat some without all the downsides of trying to go without food. And this is a commercialized product that Dr. Longo created called Prolon. We've probably had 1,000 people in my clinic do this. Some of them have done it 10 times. Some have done it once. I've done it about 14 times over the last 4 to 5 years. It's a challenging 5 days. You try and stick only to these nut bars, soups, teas, and a drink that helps you avoid hypoglycemia while you're surviving 5 days. I work a full schedule. It's more than enough food not to get that hangry feeling if you were doing a low-calorie juice fast or water fast. Published data, many published articles. This is the first one in 2017 that randomized 100 humans to doing this for 3 months or following their usual diet for 3 months with rather important outcomes identified. It might be ideal for the average American with a variety of cardiovascular conditions, altered metabolic health, like abdominal obesity, abnormal cholesterol, triglycerides, abnormal blood sugar, blood pressures, and inflammation. And it's not a bad choice for many other people either. A term I want you to know, if you don't know, is autophagy. Some people pronounce it autophagy. Auto means self, phagy means eating. It's the body's way of cleaning out damaged cells in order to regenerate newer, healthier cells. Autophagy is the goal of calorie restriction, fasting, dietary restriction, as well as the fasting mimicking diet. It's not an easy test to measure. There isn't a blood test that says I've achieved autophagy, but it is a scientific evaluation, and the knowledge of this won the Nobel Prize in Medicine a few years back. So just finishing up fasting mimicking diet, targeting the aging process itself with fasting mimicking diets can potentially attenuate the risk for age-related cardiac diseases. All right. Another tip, you can start today. You can start eating more legumes. You can consider calorie-restricted programs like the fasting mimicking diet. You can learn about lignans and eat more lignans. Lignans are polyphenolic compounds. We've heard that word in relationship to the wine of Sardinia. Here we see it again, found in plants. They're found in a variety of plant-based foods, seeds, whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables. Look at it in yellow. Flax seeds are by far the richest dietary source of lignin precursors. So if you look at the concentration, flaxseed has 294 milligram per 100 grams of flaxseed. Sesame seeds, 40% of that, about 100. And cashew nuts, only about a sixth of that, 56. And many other foods have far less. So it's a very good habit to get ground flaxseed in your diet for its blood pressure lowering effect, its cholesterol lowering effect, its healthy gut effect. But lignans, and why do we care about lignans? Well, here you go. Just a few months back, a major study involving 214,000 men and women who did not have cardiovascular disease or cancer. They had dietary data. They were followed for around 30 years. Increased long-term intake of lignans was associated with significantly lower risk of total coronary heart disease events in both men and women. Possible synergistic effects may exist between lignin and fiber intake, possibly through enhancing the production of what's called enterolignans. But if you've been skipping eating ground flaxseed or sesame seeds or cashews, you're missing out on lignans. And please try and add back in your ground flaxseed. Now, I love hemp hearts and I love chia seeds, but it's the ground flaxseed that has the lignans. All right, here's a fun one. Did you know this? The Association of Hot Red Chili Pepper Consumption and Mortality, a large population-based cohort study. There's now about 5 or 6 studies just like this. The frequency of hot red chili pepper consumption was measured in 16,000 participants, 19 years of follow-up, looking at death rates. Hot red chili pepper intake was associated with a 13% lower risk of death. The conclusion, the consumption of hot red chili pepper was associated with reduced mortality. Hot red chili peppers may be a beneficial component of the diet. Crazy. Spice it up. And I have large containers now in my office of organic red pepper chili flakes. I have them at home. I pull the bottle out regularly. If I'm in an Italian restaurant, I'm going to ask for a little dish of red pepper chili flakes. Indian restaurant, put them on my food, and I've learned to really, really enjoy spicing it up. And this couldn't be newer. This is brand new. But there's a term called senolytics. Do you know the word senile? Somebody's senile, they're aging. And cells that are getting old are called senescent. You can call them senile cells, but they're called senescent cells. Senolytics are compounds that might interrupt the aging process. Well, it's just been reported that ginger has a compound called gingerone. And if you look at the bottom, published just recently, identification of gingerenone, actually, gingerenone A is a novel senolytic compound. So I've taken the habit over the years of using ginger sliced in smoothies, ginger shots, but I found online a nice big bottle of organic ginger juice. It's pretty potent. I actually have a ginger tea in the office that's actually a powder that when you add water to it, you basically have reconstituted ginger juice. It's very settling for the stomach. It's spicy, but it's very enjoyable alternative to a cup of coffee. All right, we got to talk about vitamins. We could spend 2 hours on vitamins, but I've chosen to spend a short amount of time. And I'm doing this in list of what I believe is the data suggesting vitamins and longevity. Researchers from Sweden conducted a double-blind placebo-controlled study, 443 healthy adults aged 70 to 88. They received placebo or a combination, 200 milligrams a day of CoQ10, 200 micrograms a day of selenium. During a follow-up of 5 years, 12.6% of the placebo group died of cardiovascular disease, compared to only 5.9% in the supplement group. Impressive and significant difference. Now, it turns out they've actually followed these people beyond, the study was planned to be 5 years, and they've actually followed these people up longer, I believe 12 to 14 years. And even though they only took the vitamins during the study period, they actually have shown sustained advantages to this combination. Now, some people comment, if you study the soil in Sweden, it can be low in selenium. And it might be that there's a lot of selenium deficient people in Sweden that aren't necessarily deficient in your neighborhood. But 200 micrograms a day is considered an appropriate vitamin level of selenium. You'd have to eat maybe 5 or 6 Brazil nuts to get that much if you want to do it that way. But it's pretty hard to say that this is just expensive vitamins. Because they're actually reducing significantly the risk of dying of heart disease. So we have these terms. I wanted to just make sure you're talking the language of longevity science, senescence, senescent cells, and senolytics. Why are senile cells harmful? Senescent cells produce molecules that disturb function of neighboring cells. Senescent cells can even misguide their neighbors, to becoming cancer cells. We'd like to get rid of senescent cells. Senolytics are currently under human study, various cocktails of drugs and natural products. Senolytics hopefully remove those senescent cells. The ones that have been studied the most in humans are at the Mayo Clinic, dasatinib and quercetin. It's called D plus Q, sort of like Dairy Queen. And in very limited studies done at the Mayo Clinic by Dr. Kirkland, they're actually showing some evidence in people with advanced lung disease that these approaches are of an advantage. Quercetin is a vitamin found in strawberries, onions, apples. Dasatinib is a pharmaceutical drug, and it's one I've never prescribed. It's used in blood disorders, leukemias and the like, lymphomas. So it's under research and as an anti-aging agent, senolytic agent, but I'm not prescribing it in my clinic as a routine approach. Fisetin is a vitamin. Fisetin is a phenolic compound found in predominantly strawberries, and it's available as a vitamin over the counter, but it's only preliminary to say it may be an effective senolytic. We simply don't have enough data. What about drugs? Well, metformin, maybe you're aware, maybe not, is a prescription drug. It used to be called glucophage, originally isolated from lilacs, that in studies that were done over the last 10 to 20 years, surprisingly, people on metformin not only had lower blood sugars, which is why the drug was approved many years ago, but they had less rates of certain cancers and overall death. And these were the kind of association studies we've been seeing. So a researcher in New York, Dr. Nir Barzilai of New York University, has been trying for years to get a formal study going of randomizing people to metformin versus placebo. And he finally has got that funded. It's called the TAME study. And we'll just have to wait and see. The study was side-railed a bit during the pandemic, but hopefully they're enrolling vigorously now. And maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we'll see some definitive data about risks and benefits. Metformin is generally a safe drug. It can cause nausea. It can cause some people to lose vitamin B12 and other nutrients. There's some data about it having a negative impact on exercise fitness. So you don't necessarily just rush in and start adding prescription drugs for longevity when they simply haven't been studied yet. Rapamycin is an immune suppressant drug used in transplant patients. Small doses show some promise in the world of anti-aging. There certainly could be important side effects. It's not approved for anti-aging. I don't prescribe it for anti-aging. I don't take rapamycin, but there are actually clinics that will prescribe it to those that are hungry for anti-aging compounds. And I mentioned the Mayo Clinic is studying this combination of a prescription drug, dasatinib, and quercetin, which is a vitamin, in actual human patients, published recently in the Mayo Clinic. There's a pathway in the body, if you're really into anti-aging, called the Klotho pathway, Klotho. It was recently shown in Mayo that there's an impact of this combination of senolytic agents, dasatinib and quercetin, on the Klotho pathway that was beneficial. A few more just to mention. GlyNAC. GlyNAC is an abbreviation for two very simple vitamins, glycine and NAC. Glycine is an amino acid. Sometimes in a vegan diet, it's challenging to get it. NAC is N-acetylcysteine. It's one of the least expensive vitamins on the market. For reasons that aren't clear, it's not available on the big seller Amazon, but it's available on many websites. It's available in my clinic for sure. And there's now several studies in the elderly, frail population that the combination of taking two vitamins, glycine and NAC, may have some benefits for cognition, for balance, for general frailty versus strength. They're very inexpensive. Glycine can be used for sleep. So people in my clinic may take one glycine capsule and one NAC capsule at night and get a possible anti-aging benefit and hopefully also a sleep benefit. The combination of glycine and NAC helps the body make more of something called glutathione, and glutathione is a very important antioxidant in the body, maybe the most important. Spermidine is a compound that is found in sperm, but is found in plant-based foods. Wheat germ by far has the highest concentration of spermidine. So do peas, mushrooms, tofu, and some others. Spermidine seems to promote autophagy, that term about auto eating or cleaning up damaged areas. Adding more organic wheat germ, peas, mushrooms, tofu, and there are actually also wheat germ capsules called Spermidine Life that one could buy. There are actual peer-reviewed, published, randomized studies using spermidine for memory that are small but impressive, and it's hopeful and certainly generally safe. Quercetin and fisetin I mentioned, they're vitamins, they're polyphenols. Apples, onions, garlic, strawberries are where they're found rich in nature, but they're inexpensive. There were a lot of people that added quercetin. Some people pronounce it quercetin during the pandemic for some reported benefits that are mentioned in other literature. Ginger, we talked about. And then finally, there's a compound in the body that regulates energy and wellness called NAD+. There are ways to raise NAD+ levels in the blood and the cells because as we age, we produce less NAD+. NR stands for nicotinamide riboside. And it's been shown that if you take that vitamin, several different brands, you will increase your NAD+ levels in the body. And one called NMN, not M&Ms, but NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, another vitamin you can buy that raises, in recent publications, NAD+ levels. There's a lot of hope that you won't just raise levels, but you actually help the aging process, promote healthy health spans and longevity. That is certainly all just speculation right now. There's many trials ongoing right here in Detroit. We have a company that makes a version of NMN that's called MIB 626. That's not a secret. That's public knowledge. And they've got 6 ongoing human studies of NMN crystalline MIB 626. But you can't buy it right now, and we need to wait to see. That's why I favor Glynac has published human studies. Spermidine has published human studies. Quercetin has some, ginger has some, fisetin, more animal studies and human studies. So I think sometimes it's time to wait and eat healthy food and exercise and sleep well and don't smoke. All right. So in a book, very famous book in the anti-aging world, The Science Behind Radical Life Extension, Fantastic Voyage. The message was live long enough to live forever. And not everybody wants to live forever. Some people are intrigued by that. Certainly the multi-billionaires in the world like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Cuban, and others are investing major dollars in companies that are, Altos is one of the companies been in the headlines lately, that are focusing on life extension techniques and the rest, but we'll all hopefully benefit from this knowledge over the coming years. So I'm going to stop sharing and see we have a nice, big, rich group now. And I'm going to turn back over to our wonderful moderator and leader. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about, practical and cutting edge and hopeful future approaches to living long and healthy lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kahn. It's a great presentation, especially for those who have the, longevity in mind for most people. All right, so before we start with the Q&A, if anyone wants to follow up with you or find any of your books, where's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you were kind enough at the beginning to put up my website, drjoelkahn.com. That's drjoelkahn.com. And you can get a link to my clinic. We do see people all over the world, literally, certainly all over the United States, as well as a store for the books and some other items that I believe are quite helpful, and a lot of free material, a lot of free articles and videos. And I have a weekly podcast you mentioned in the introduction called Heart Doc VIP. And it's short and sweet, 25 minutes. And there's, fortunately, thousands and thousands of listeners around the world. It's been a real joy to share some of this information. In fact, I included a longevity podcast recently to go and coincide with promoting people watching this presentation today. And maybe you're going to watch it recorded. That's great. It's all good and up-to-date information.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Dr. Kahn. So now, as you said before, let's get ready for the Q&A. I just want to let everyone know how we do the Q&A here. We normally don't take questions directly from the chat. Instead, we ask everyone to virtually raise their hand. If you're not sure how to do this, just go to the bottom of your Zoom window and click on the reactions tab at the bottom, and then you'll basically see a raised hand function that will pop up. Click your raised hand function, and then we'll see you in our participants window. We take questions in the order in which we receive them, and when it's your turn, we'll unmute you and prompt you to ask your questions. And with that, are you ready to go for this, Dr. Kahn?
Yeah, I am. I just want to point out, since there's more people now than when we started, I pretty much live my life on a treadmill desk. So if you're seeing me now after the slides went off, you may see me bouncing around. It's just, I don't have a hill and an onion garden behind my house like if I lived in Sardinia, but I do have a way to walk 7-8 hours a day when I'm seeing patients in my clinic and at home when I'm doing work. So it's a fun add-on that goes beyond just a standing desk, which is how I started all this. But a treadmill standing desk is the top of the flight fitness.
Mm-hmm. And you are practicing what you preach, as you said before.
I think so. I got a big water bottle and I have I didn't talk about cacao powder, but there's raw cacao powder in here, which is very good for endothelial function. Can't say it's going to extend your life, but a recent study suggested that may be possible too.
Great. All right. So first we have Anne. Anne, what is your question?
Hi, Dr. Kahn. Thank you for taking my call. I'm listening to you from Toronto.
Wow.
I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer 2 years ago. I know you're not a cancer doctor, and I'm very much on a keto diet because I do not want to feed my cancer stem cells glucose. So I am eating nuts and seeds, but I am eating eggs, meat, but a lot of dark green leafy veg. I do the keto sticks. I test my urine. And so far, my CA-125s have remained relatively low. But I'm concerned, and I have been following you for a couple of years, that my diet is not good for my heart health. And I love legumes, I love whole grains. But when I eat those and I test my urine, my glucose has gone up, and that scares me. I don't want this cancer to come back.
We all hesitate to give specific patient recommendations. I can only speak generally because I don't treat cancer and you're not a patient in my clinic. I mean, you can monitor. I tell not all my patients in the clinic follow a whole food plant-based diet, unfortunately. And I will, work with them where they're at. And I tell them, if you're going to do a different diet, a paleo, a keto diet, at least monitor what we call the biomarkers, at least know if your cholesterol went up significantly, what's your LDL cholesterol, your triglycerides. There is clearly data that in some people, meat-heavy diets cause insulin resistance, cause a release of insulin, cause a rise in the hemoglobin A1C. There are other people that react differently, but you got to check those parameters and see what's working for you if you're going on such a journey. And, in general, like if one were to travel to West Palm Beach and go to the Hippocrates Health Institute, which has been an alternative site of cancer therapy, or True North in Santa Rosa, California, an alternative site, they would probably recommend for the same diagnosis a raw whole food plant diet, not the diet you're following. So just anybody needs to keep open-minded. Hey, use of food as an actual therapy for cancer, just in my general knowledge, is certainly still an early field. So with the exception of some glioblastoma brain cancers in the ketogenic diet, I think we always need more data. So just keep open-minded about it all. And I think there is a facility in Toronto called Kahn MD, CANMED, where a person can go get one of those calcium score CT scans. It's always best to have as much data as possible.
Thank you for that, Doctor. Next, we have Steve. Steve, what is your question?
Dr. Kahn, do you recommend people that are already eating a whole food plant-based diet and living a healthy lifestyle get all these tests? For example, should Brian Clement get all the tests that you're recommending? And if it turned out that there was a risk factor and you were already doing everything you can do, what would be the next step? Are you recommending certain medicines?
Good morning, Steve. It's a very provocative question. Brian Clement is the PhD naturopathic head of the Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida, that I just mentioned. Somebody who's been living, from my observation, extremely healthy environment and food life for decades. I don't know. I would ask Brian his family history. I would do blood work. One could argue if his blood work, inflammation, insulin resistance, lipids, cholesterol, vitamin levels were optimal, which I would imagine he'd be pretty close to. Maybe if there was a family history, throw in a couple of genetic markers, the lipoprotein A, the NP21. And if that all further supported the biochemistry of low risk, you could do nothing beyond what we said, assuming he's not snoring and doesn't need a home sleep study by WatchPat1. But, you easily could just toss in. I could tell Brian where to go in Boca and get a carotid study to confirm that around late 60s, which is what I think Brian is, his vascular age was lower or at least equal to that. I just find in my office, I've got healthy people that are runners, thin, eat well, and they have a large burden of cardiovascular disease. And I work with them to dig deep into why. And sometimes the genetic component. I have people that inherited lipoprotein A, ApoE44, NP21 from both parents. And honestly, they are in trouble despite healthy lifestyle. We got to work twice as hard to protect them. So it all would depend, but I wouldn't do everything on Brian. I would do some. And thank you, Brian, for letting us use you as an example without your permission.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Steve, for that. Next, we have Andrew. Andrew, what is your question?
Hey, Dr. Kahn, great to see you. Andrew from Florida. Great presentation today. Two questions regarding longevity. You mentioned thanos therapy. Anything on cryotherapy, both the effectiveness and the safety of it? And also, I believe you added something new to your clinic. It's related to like a non-invasive scan of the arteries. I forget the name of it, but there's a company called HeartFlow. It's not the one that you use, but it's along the same lines. Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody's in the Jacksonville area, go buy a Genesis car from Andrew. He's a good
Thank you very much.
He's a good friend. Andrew, so let me take the last step. HeartFlow is a software done during a very advanced but wonderful test called CT angiography of your heart arteries, something done at hospitals or a few outpatient centers or emergency rooms using a CT scanner, using dye called iodine contrast, watching the arteries of the heart fill with dye and measuring any presence of hard plaque, soft plaque, how narrowed arteries are. If you have an artery that is in the middle range, 50 to 70% narrowed as an example, and it's not clear if that patient might benefit from a stent, HeartFlow is a software that actually measures how much blood can get down that artery. And if it's in the normal range, there's no reason to talk about a stent with that patient. And if it shows reduced blood flow down that artery through that moderate blockage, it will indicate there may be a reason and the insurance company may pay for a stent. If there's 10% blockage, you don't need HeartFlow. And if there's 99% blockage, you don't need HeartFlow. It's for the moderate group. And it's a real good add-on, particularly in the emergency room, people with chest pain. I think what you're also referring to, there's a competitor, frankly, called Clearly Health, CLEERLY health.com in New York City. I'm not an investor, so I don't mind talking about it. I send people for Clearly Health studies all over the United States. It's the same CT study with dye. There is radiation. You have to have healthy kidneys. You can't be iodine dye allergic. You have to have a low heart rate, or we give you a medicine to create a low heart rate. But this now uses artificial intelligence to look up and down every millimeter of the heart arteries, telling me when the report comes back, is there plaque? Is it hard calcified plaque, which might be more stable but abnormal? Is there soft non-calcified plaque, which might be more dangerous? How much of it is, where it is, and how narrow the arteries are measured by computer, not by eyeball. This has been a radical advance in my precision with patients. I had a patient this week. His regular heart calcium CT scoring study was under 10, but we found out 97% of the plaque in his arteries, which was a lot in his heart arteries, was soft, non-calcified plaque I was missing. And it's finally gotten into his head. He needs to make the changes I've been talking to him about for years, but I needed something to prove it to him. So yes, precision medicine is a really important term. Clearlyhealth.com is a radiation-based CT scan that has brought the precision of measuring heart arteries into the modern era. Everything before was just eyeball estimates, but it's not for everybody. It's also moderately expensive. It's over $1,000 often out of pocket.
Thanks, Andrew, for that. Thank you, doctor. Next, we have Yaron. Yaron, what's your question?
Hi, doctor. Thank you for the great presentation. You mentioned in one of the panel the importance also of the omega-3. And I'm a vegan. I have all my blood tests within the range except of the omega-3 score. I have it as a 1%. I know recommended at least 5%. Although I taking on a daily basis ground flaxseed, 4 tablespoons, and lots of walnuts and other. I'm afraid to take DHA from algae because I heard that it's have oxidation even more than fish oil. But probably there is a conversion problem in my case from ALA to DHA. What would you recommend to deal with such a situation? Thank you.
Yes. So, and happy Passover to you, Yaron. I would imagine by your accent, you're from Israel. So peace and blessings to everybody celebrating anything during the year. So there are people that can eat a lot of ground flaxseed, chia seeds, hemp hearts, walnuts, and are not efficient converting them over to EPA DHA. There's a way to measure that by your 23andMe or your SNPs. It's called the FAD SNP. I'm very efficient. I measured mine. So give me all the ground flaxseed and I'll make good amounts of EPA and DHA, but others don't. Maybe that's why I've survived as a vegan for 45 years, a little genetic advantage, perhaps. I'm unaware about there being concern. There are many brands of algae-based omega-3 that have good concentrations of EPA, DPA, and DHA. We usually talk about them being an advantage. We don't have to worry about environmental contaminants like mercury and PCBs and BPA and some of the other things that are in fish, PFAS, terrible chemicals, DDT. Whether they oxidize or not, I'm not sure. I actually use a brand in my clinic that combines algae omega-3 with a wonderful antioxidant called astaxanthin, which gives salmon its pink color and flamingos its pink color, ASTAXANTHIN. There's a particular kind of bacteria, I believe it is, that produces lots and lots of vegan astaxanthin. Otherwise, it's usually from animal sources. And I would think it would protect the algae-based omega-3 from oxidation. The other thing that doesn't get mentioned enough, and certainly Brian Clements would chime in and agree, is chlorella. Chlorella is an algae. That's the original ocean source that give fish omega-3 in their flesh. And a big handful, I usually take about 30 tablets a day, little tiny tablets smaller than a pea of organic chlorella. They're rich in nutrients, very high in protein. But it's a very good source of easily absorbable omega-3, the original source, the OG source, original gangster source there. So maybe add in a good source of organic chlorella from algae into your diet.
Great, thank you for that, doctor. Next we have Randy. Randy, what is your question?
Yes, thank you for your talk. I don't know if you know anything about I'm supposed to have a CMC joint replacement, which sounds like kind of a brutal surgery. I am plant-based for over 2 years, hoping that, the plant-based would maybe correct it. sounds like a big recovery though. And
What is CMC?
it's the joint thumb. They say it's very common to get the arthritis in that ball of your thumb.
Right. I'm familiar with that. I'm not familiar with the surgery. You might look up a company. They're doing it in the knees called BioSplice, BIO Splice.
Okay.
They are one of the companies on the leading edge of inducing new cartilage formation using genetic engineering. It's not actually stem cell therapy, but it's cutting edge. And at least I think for the knee, they've accumulated so much data. Some people say they'll be FDA approved by 2023. There may be other companies, working on that, other joints, but, it does have to go through the FDA pathway. Lots of onion, garlic, all the anti-inflammatory foods on the planet. You're probably doing that, but I don't have a specific, I don't know if you've ever done topical full spectrum CBD hemp, on the joint and see if you get any absorbed and see how that helps you. That can be quite anti-inflammatory.
Okay. And according to all the tests that you suggested, is there a place to go? Like I live in Ohio, so is there a place to go to see where I might be able to go get some of these?
Last I checked, Michigan and Ohio are pretty close to each other. So a lot of people drive up from Ohio to my clinic, which about 60 minutes north of the border.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy, for that. Thank you, doctor. Next, we have Angela. Angela, what's your question?
Thank you very much, Dr. Kahn. I appreciate this. I wanted to ask you if ground down Nigella sativa, black cumin seeds, contain lignans, not the oil, but the ground down seeds.
Yeah, there actually are a lot of questions about black cumin seeds, Nigella sativa, in the question chat box. I noticed. I'm a recent and big fan, excuse me, of Nigella sativa. And just in case people don't know, there is the spice cumin, an important staple of the Indian diet. Cumin is one of the components of curry powder, a wonderful organic purchase to add to your food. I have a big bottle of organic curry powder. I literally put on top of all my wife's good cooking and mess it up, but I just want the spice. But there's a separate black cumin seed with the chemical name Nigella sativa. It's reported it's been found in King Tut's tomb, so it goes back a few thousand years in human nutrition. The Prophet Muhammad and the Muslim faith said black cumin seed can cure all things but death, because the doctors already were using it. And there actually are about 800 scientific human studies and basic studies about the benefits of adding black cumin seeds to your diet: weight loss, diabetic control, cholesterol control, inflammation. There is not a rich lignin concentration in black cumin seeds. There's other reasons to buy either whole black cumin seeds or ground. I cannot find the answer if you need to grind your whole seeds like you might grind whole flaxseed. It's quite a production. So lately I've been buying a brand non-GMO ground black cumin. It's another thing I add on my lunch pretty much every day. It has a nice peppery flavor. And yes, you mentioned you can buy high quality oil, black cumin seed oil or black cumin seed oil capsules. I always prefer, the whole food when there's a chance, get all the fibers. So I've played with all of it, and I recommend people consider looking at it. It actually is not well known, but during the pandemic, again, there were 4 or 5 published studies that the regular use of black cumin seeds supported the immune system and actually showed some benefit to preventing severity of illness. So it was actually on some very well-known protocols as an alternative to other approaches for managing risk and illness from the disease.
Thank you there, Angela. Next we have Benny. Benny, what is your question?
Thank you, doctor. Don't know if you covered this before. Heard you mention raw food. Do you have any suggested percentage of raw food in the diet that's beneficial? And also, do you have any comment on food combining as discussed by Herbert Shelton and the benefits of colon cleansing? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll probably leave the last two questions to your next speaker, who is awesome and just signed on, Dr. Michael Clapper. In terms of raw versus cooked, I don't measure in my life. Again, I've been vegan 45 years. I eat food. I always eat at least one salad, as I say, bigger than my head. I think I stole that from Chef AJ. That's obviously raw. My nuts are raw, my seeds are raw. But I'm not completely raw like Hippocrates Health Institute and other educators for certain conditions. I'm certainly not completely cooked. There was a fairly widely reported study recently, 2022, that vegetables may not have as much cardiovascular prevention as previously reported. And, the media loves this, the meat industry loves this. When you read the study, both cooked vegetables and raw vegetables both showed in a big database benefits for the prevention of cardiovascular disease. But the statistical significance was only for raw vegetables. So eat your cooked, eat your raw. That's only one study. It doesn't change all of biologic science for 70 years when you have one study. But there may be some good benefit to eat an apple, an orange, a radish, occasionally dip raw broccoli in your organic hummus and all the other wonderful things we enjoy for health.
Next up is Linda. Linda, could you please, I'm going to unmute you if you could please ask your question.
Yes. Hi, Dr. Kahn. I'm a big fan. Happy Passover. I'm also a big fan of other whole food plant-based doctors. And for example, Dr. Furman, he is not, I don't think he's a big advocate of medication. I'm sure that he knows there are times to use it. But my question is about this general topic about longevity. I'm not going to get into my own personal situation, except that I do eat very well, I think, 90% whole food plant-based. But I have other things like lipoprotein A. So my concern is about those that fit into the category that you would nuance that might need medication. What are the endpoints, the hard endpoints for people on medications like statins over the long period of time, longevity-wise?
Happy holidays. Very quick answer because it's a wonderful question. But what's often missing in the decision to put somebody on lifelong medication is a precise diagnosis, at least in my heart field. So people are put on statins and we have no idea if they even have the disease statins are indicated for, which is atherosclerosis. So even our stodgy American Heart Association says, if you've been put on statins and you have one of those calcium CT scans and it's 0, unless you're a smoker or an advanced diabetic, you don't need statins generally. And similarly, if you do a carotid CIMT scan and it's clean as a whistle, the scientific world has said now for about 17 years, if you don't have the disease, you very rarely need a preventive treatment with prescription drugs. Of course, you celebrate the good news and you keep on a healthy lifestyle or you adopt a healthy lifestyle. There are exceptions to that, but those are printed protocols by very prestigious groups. If you have disease, I use prescription drugs, and I have all the world of respect for Dr. Joel Furman. I don't believe he's seeing patients actively anymore. I have an overwhelmingly large practice of patients. The cardiology community now wants, according to science and guidelines, if you have bad heart disease, bad blockages, bypass stents, strokes, we want your LDL cholesterol to be 55 or lower, a very aggressive goal. Most often that takes a great lifestyle plus some type of prescription drug. In my clinic, very low dose, very flexible in what we use, but we get the results. We can't not get the results because we have to stop and start to reverse plaque. And I believe the Dr. Ornish program, the Pritikin program, the McDougall program, the Furman program, the Barnard program, these are all radically good. But even Dr. Esselstyn used statins in his trials. He used pravastatin when needed. We have a lot of tools. You can't win everything with a carrot. You won't win with a carrot alone.
Okay, thank you.
The next person up is Alan. I'm going to unmute you, and if you could ask your question.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned hyperbaric chamber. There's a system out there called LiveO2 that is exercising with oxygen that has contrast therapy. There's no studies on it, but do you think theoretically that it can duplicate hyperbaric activity? And secondly, on NAC, there's a small mouse study that showed cancer development in healthy mice using NAC. What do you think of that study? And do you think it's dangerous to use NAC for cancer?
Okay, so
Thank
to
you.
answer the first one, I'm not a distributor, but my workout this morning was on my LiveO2 unit I have in my basement and an elliptical. I know the science. I wish there were human studies, but it's very simply, you do a workout on a treadmill, an elliptical, a bicycle with a mask on your face. And part of the time the oxygen level is super high and part of the time the oxygen level is super low. It's like climbing to a mountaintop, back to baseline, mountaintop, baseline. It's a very challenging workout. I wouldn't recommend for everybody, but at least theoretically, it might substitute for hyperbaric oxygen therapy in an anti-aging world. We don't know that for sure. I haven't grown back a ponytail since I started doing it. I thought that might happen. LiveO2, adaptive contrast. I'm unaware of that mouse study. But NAC is an FDA-approved drug for people with thick mucus like cystic fibrosis. It had to go through enormous human studies, so I'm not going to be dissuaded by one mouse study. There's a lot of things that show up in one study causing cancer, and it's hard not to pay attention. All these drug recalls of blood pressure drugs. Lately, the largest prescribed blood pressure class called angiotensin receptor blockers, one study with lung cancer. You worry, but you can't throw everything out on one study, particularly a mouse study.
Thank you.
The next one up is David M. I'm going to unmute you. If you could please ask your question.
Hi, Dr. Kahn. I'm wondering if you have an opinion about whether having a deviated septum surgically corrected would improve one's health.
Well, really in less than a minute, obstructive sleep apnea has a lot of causes. It does take a serious toll on health. That simple home sleep study that's widely available, the WatchPat 1 is a great solution. And if a person is found to have obstructive sleep apnea, weight loss, various procedures on the palate using laser, we're correcting a deviated septum. Sometimes deviated septum just produces noisy sleep, not actual sleep apnea, and then it's a cosmetic issue. But yeah, that is something you need to see a competent ear, nose, and throat doc. Some of the ear, nose, and throat docs are board certified in sleep medicine and might be a special kind of doc to see.
Thank you.
Next one up is David S. I'm going to unmute you. If you could please ask your question.
Hi, Dr. Kahn. I'll keep it really quick. I took your advice and got a calcium CT score, and thankfully it was 0. But then, later at the same practice, and I think on the same machine, I got a low-dose CT lung screening, and my lungs were fine. But as an incidental finding, the radiologist wrote calcified atherosclerotic plaques in the aortic arch and coronary arteries. And I don't know how to reconcile those two findings, and neither did my doctor.
10-second answer. Ask for a copy of both CT scans on a CD disc. Arrange a consult with me and mail them to me, and let me look at them. Somebody competent needs to look at both. And even though I'm not a radiologist, I've looked at, coronary arteries by CT thousands of times. You should get it resolved. I've seen errors every which way you're mentioning. I think we have 1 minute left, though.
Yep. Actually, it seems like we've run out of time.
Sorry, Stephen and Doreen. I'll just say, if anybody wants to reach me, I have an email, drkahn@kahncenter.com, drkahn@kahncenter.com. So if Stephen and Doreen, you want to send me an email, I'll try and answer your question.
Thank you for that, Dr. Kahn. And thank you for joining us again for this conference. Also, I just want to ask all our audience to basically say the same thing. You guys have something to say to Dr. Kahn?
Dr. Kahn, you're the best.
Dr. Kahn. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kahn, that was a